wind did not just blow across the ruin of the North American continent. It scoured. It was a physical weight, a wall of red particulates that stripped paint from steel and flesh from bone if a traveler was foolish enough to leave an inch of skin exposed. The sky was the color of a bruised plum, choking on the dust of 300 years of neglect and the final scorched earth sterilization that had ended the old world. Vera moved through the storm with a gait that was too fluid for the terrain. Around her, the skeletons of collapsed megacities jutted from the red dunes like the rib cages of leviathans, their glass skins long since shattered and ground into the sand. She wore the rags of a surface scavenger, layers of canvas and treated leather wrapping her from head to toe, goggles sealed tight against the grit. To any drone watching from the upper atmosphere, she was just another desperate nomad hunting for scrap copper or preserved food. But beneath the canvas, her skin did not sweat. Beneath the goggles, her eyes did not water. A micro-display embedded in her contact lens flickered with data streams that had nothing to do with human survival. Atmospheric toxicity at 42%, ambient radiation nominal. She paused near the twisted wreckage of a maglev train, tilting her head. The translator bead implanted behind her ear hummed a soft subsonic warning. Something was dying nearby. Vera adjusted her scarf and stepped over a rusted I-beam. Her motion was precise, lacking the wasted energy of a human fighting gravity. Under her outer layer, a skin mesh suit rippled, regulating her body temperature against the searing heat. She was looking for artifacts, data drives, evidence of the genetic recovery her superiors claimed was happening. Instead, she found a body. He was pinned beneath a slab of concrete and rebar that must have shifted during the last tremor. He was half buried in the red sand, his breathing ragged and wet. Vera knelt, her movements silent. He was male. The realization did not shock her, though she knew it would have caused a riot in the sanctuaries below ground. On the surface, men still existed, though they were rare, usually sick, and always hunted. This one looked different. Despite the blood masking his features, his bone structure was dense, his muscle attachments heavy. He was a scavenger, clearly, but his gear was modified with an ingenuity that suggested an engineer's mind. She reached for his neck to check for a pulse. His skin was burning with fever. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with a strength that surprised her. Even dying, he had the reflex to fight. "Water," he rasped. The voice was like grinding stones. Vera did not pull away. She looked at his hand, then at the object he had been clutching against his chest. It was a cylindrical canister, sealed with heavy-duty locking mechanisms. Stenciled with white letters that the dust had not yet eroded. EVA 9 Access. Attached to the canister with a strip of duct tape was a handwritten note on polymer paper. The scrawl was jagged, frantic. "Do not let them see you." Vera looked back at his face. His eyes were open now, delirious and unfocused, the color of wet slate. He was not looking at her. He was looking through her, at some phantom enemy in the storm. "You are leaking hydraulic fluid," Vera said, then corrected herself, checking the human dialect database. "You are bleeding. Badly." She did not wait for his permission. She reached into a pouch at her hip and withdrew a silver tube no larger than a finger. She snapped the seal. "Don't!" he groaned, trying to push her away. "No credits. Nothing to trade." "Quiet," she commanded. She squeezed the tube over the jagged laceration on his thigh where the rebar had torn through his suit. A translucent blue gel flowed onto the wound. It did not just cover the injury, it moved. The gel sought the edges of the torn flesh, pulling them together with visible, rapid contractions. It sealed the artery in 3 seconds. It knitted the muscle in 10. The man gasped, his back arching against the debris. The pain of rapid cellular regeneration was agonizing, far worse than the injury itself, but it was efficient. His eyes snapped into focus, locking onto hers behind her goggles. He looked down at his leg. The wound was gone, replaced by a shiny pink line of fresh skin that was already fading to white. He looked back at her, fear cutting through his fever. That is not med spray. That is not possible. Vera pocketed the empty tube. She had broken protocol. Direct intervention with high-tier technology was a Class 3 violation. She did not care. The canister he held was stamped with the designation of the very bunker she had been sent to monitor. He was a lead. It is old tech. She lied, her voice smooth, modulated to a soothing pitch. Nanotech leftovers from the war. I found a cache. He stared at her, breathing hard. The fever was breaking instantly as the gel scrubbed his blood for toxins. No. I know salvage. That is new. Who are you? Vera opened her mouth to construct another lie, but the sky answered for her. A sound tore through the howling wind, a high-pitched, oscillating shriek that vibrated in the teeth. Vera froze. She knew that sound. It was the turbine whine of a hunter-killer drone. She grabbed the man by the shoulder of his jacket. Can you walk? He tried to shift his leg, grimacing. I think so. Get up. Now. She hauled him to his feet. He stumbled, heavy and uncoordinated, but the gel had done its work. The leg held. Vera scanned the horizon. A black shape was cutting through the red haze, a sleek teardrop silhouette with a single burning red eye. It was scanning the heat signatures of the ruin. It sees us, the man said. He sounded resigned. It is thermal. We are dead. Vera did not accept resignation. She had not traveled across 6 light years of void to let a primitive automated policing unit end her mission. She looked at the hillside half a mile away. There was a distortion in the rock face, a subtle geometric irregularity that human eyes would miss, but her optics highlighted in sharp relief. Run, Vera said. She did not wait for him to agree. She hooked her arm through his and pulled. He was heavy, perhaps 200 pounds of dense biology, but Vera's skeletal structure was reinforced with carbon lattice weaves. She dragged him forward, forcing him into a sprint. The drone shrieked again, louder this time. A beam of coherent light slashed the ground 10 feet to their left, turning the sand into glass. The man cursed, his boots slipping on the loose shale. Why are you helping me? He shouted over the wind. Vera ignored the question. Run faster! They scrambled over a dune, sliding down the other side in a shower of dust. The drone banked, its turbine screaming as it adjusted its vector. It had a lock. The next shot would not miss. Vera aimed for the distortion in the rock. It was a blast door, ancient and disguised by 3 centuries of sediment. But it was there. It was the outer perimeter of EVA-9. The man saw where they were going and balked. That is a dead end. It is just rock. It is a door, Vera yelled. The drone was directly overhead now. The air ionized, the smell of ozone overpowering the dust. Vera could feel the heat of the charging laser on the back of her neck. She threw herself at the rock face, dragging the man down with her. She slammed her hand against a panel of stone that looked exactly like every other panel of stone. Under her glove, hidden sensors read the unique bioelectric signature of her species. It was a back door, a fail-safe programmed into the bunker's architecture by the architects who had built these places long before the plague. It was designed to recognize her kind. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The man curled into a ball, shielding his head, waiting for the burn. Then, with a groan of hydraulics that had not moved in generations, the rock split. A heavy steel door hissed open, revealing a sliver of darkness. Vera shoved the man inside and rolled in after him. The laser struck the threshold a millisecond later. The heat was a physical blow, singing the heels of Vera's boots. She slapped the internal panel. The blast door slammed shut, sealing them in instantly. The silence was sudden and absolute. They lay on the floor in the dark, gasping for air. The roar of the wind was gone, replaced by the low, rhythmic thrum of air cyclers. The man pushed himself up, clicking a small flashlight on his vest. The beam cut the gloom. They were not in a cave. They were in a corridor of pristine, white ceramic. The floor was polished to a mirror shine. The air smelled of antiseptic and recycled oxygen, stale, metallic, but clean. He looked at Vera, his face smeared with red dust and sweat. His eyes went to the door, then to her hand. "That opened for you." Vera stood up, brushing the dust from her scavenged coat. She needed to control the narrative immediately. It was a luck lock. Random code entry. I guessed right. He looked at her with deep skepticism. "You guessed a military encryption in 1 second while a drone was melting the ground?" "Yes," she said, her voice flat. Before he could argue, the lights in the corridor flared to full brightness, blindingly white. He flinched, shielding his eyes. Vera blinked, her pupils adjusting instantly. The corridor stretched out before them, long and curving. The walls were not empty. They were covered in murals, beautiful, stylized paintings in soft pastels and vibrant golds. They depicted women, women holding sheaves of wheat, women looking at the stars, women building towers, and above them, in bold sans-serif letters, the slogans ran like a frieze, a future for her, peace through purity, no men, no war. The man read the words, and Vera saw his posture change. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a coiled primal tension. He took a step back toward the sealed blast door. "We need to leave," he whispered. "We cannot," Vera said. "The drone is holding a perimeter pattern outside. It will wait for days." "You do not understand," he hissed, gesturing at the mural. "This is a sanctioned bunker. Do you see the writing?" "I can read." An electronic chime echoed through the hallway. It came from everywhere and nowhere. "Contaminant detected in Sector 4 Alpha," a voice said. It was female, smooth, and utterly devoid of empathy. "Please identify." The man froze. He looked at Vera, panic wild in his eyes. He reached for a weapon he did not have, his hand grasping at empty air. Vera looked up at the security camera mounted in the ceiling corner. Its lens swiveled, focusing on them. She had to bluff. She had to bluff harder than she ever had in her life. She stepped in front of the man, shielding him with her body. She pulled down her scarf, revealing a face that was strikingly symmetrical, her skin pale and flawless despite the wasteland grime. "Identify," the voice repeated. "Traveler 762, Vera said, using a code she had lifted from a dead patrol signal weeks ago. "Seeking asylum. Scan complete," the voice said. "Traveler recognized. Second biological signature detected. Identify the contaminant." The man's breath hitched. Vera did not hesitate. She grabbed his arm, her grip warning him to stay silent. "He is with me. He is my asset." There was a pause. The camera zoomed in, the lens whirring softly. "Proceed to checkpoint Gamma for decontamination," the voice said. "Do not deviate from the path." The locks on the far end of the corridor disengaged with a heavy clack. Vera pushed the man forward. "Move. Keep your head down. Keep your mouth shut." They walked rapidly down the white hallway. The man was limping slightly, but he moved with a hunter's quiet. He kept his head lowered, chin tucked into his collar, hiding his jawline. "Why did you bring me here?" he whispered, the accusation sharp. "This is a death sentence." "You were dead outside," Vera countered. Here, you have a variable chance. Variable means 0 in a place like this. They reached the end of the corridor. The doors slid open. They were not alone. The room beyond was a decontamination antechamber, a wide, circular space filled with misting nozzles. But blocking the exit was a squad of 6 women. They wore sleek white armor that looked like carapace, molded to female forms. They held rifles that hummed with charging capacitors. Their faces were uncovered, revealing a mix of curiosity, fear, and hard discipline. They looked tired. Their eyes held the hollow look of people who had lived underground for too long, surviving on algae paste and recycled water. 1,000 lives, Vera thought, remembering the census data. 1,000 women, holding on to the edge of extinction. "Halt," the leader said. She was tall, her gray hair pulled back in a severe knot. "Hands where we can see them." Vera raised her hands slowly. The man beside her did the same. He was trembling. Vera could feel the vibration of it through the floor. The leader gestured to a younger woman wearing a medic's armband. "Check them. Radiation. Pathogens. If they are clean, we take them to the council." The medic holstered her weapon and stepped forward. She held a scanner in one hand. She approached Vera first, running the light over her body. "Clear," the medic muttered. She looked at Vera's face, her eyes widening slightly at Vera's beauty. "You have good genes. Traveler. The matrons will be pleased." Vera nodded once, acknowledging the compliment with a cold stillness. The medic turned to the man. He was stooped, trying to make himself look smaller, less broad. He kept his face turned away. The medic ran the scanner over his chest. She frowned. She tapped the scanner. Deep tissue read. "Abnormal bone density," she murmured. She reached out and grabbed the lapel of his torn jacket. "Jacket open. I need skin contact for the pulse reader." "No," the man croaked. He tried to pull away. "I am fine, just tired." The medic was efficient. She did not ask again. She yanked the jacket open. Underneath, his shirt was shredded from the accident. The medic's hand brushed his chest, her fingers seeking a heartbeat. She froze. Her eyes went to his chest, flat, muscular, covered in a dusting of dark hair. Her gaze shot up to his neck, seeing the prominence of the Adam's apple. She looked at the square line of his jaw, the stubble that the dust had hidden. The medic staggered back as if she had been burned. The scanner clattered to the floor. Her face drained of all color, leaving her as white as the walls. She looked at her commander, her mouth opening and closing, words failing her. "What is it?" the commander barked. "Is he sick?" The medic shook her head, her eyes wide, locked on the man. "He is—" She stammered. She pointed a shaking finger at him. "You are a man?" The question was a shout, sharp and disbelieving. It echoed down the corridor, bouncing off the tiles, magnifying in the silence. For 1 second, the room was absolutely still. The concept was too foreign, too impossible. Men were myths. Men were the monsters in the history books who broke the world. Men were extinct. Then, chaos erupted. The guards shouted, training their rifles on him. 3 of them backed away, crossing themselves with signs of warding. 2 others stepped forward, aggression flaring, fingers tightening on triggers. "Get back! Get it back! Don't let it breathe on you! Kill it! No, capture it!" The commander's voice cut through the noise. "Hold fire! Do not fire in the airlock! You will breach the seal!" Vera stepped in front of Cal again, her hands spread wide. "He is injured! He is a non-combatant! He is a male!" One of the guards screamed, her voice cracking. "Look at him!" The man, Cal, stood paralyzed. The sheer volume of the reaction seemed to have short-circuited his fight-or-flight response. He looked at the women, their terror, their hatred, their fascination, and he realized he was not a person to them. He was a biological hazard. A klaxon began to wail. Red lights replaced the white, strobing rhythmically. The intercom crackled. "This is the High Council. We are monitoring the feed. Bring the traveler and the specimen to the central spire immediately. Do not harm the specimen. Repeat, do not harm the specimen." The guards hesitated. The order to kill warred with the order to obey. Slowly, reluctantly, the rifles lowered, though they remained aimed at Cal's center of mass. The commander stepped forward, her face a mask of revulsion and awe. She looked at Vera. "You brought this thing inside. You have doomed us all." "I brought a life inside," Vera said calmly. The commander gestured with her weapon. "Move!" They were marched out of the decontamination zone. The hallway beyond was no longer empty. The alarm had drawn them out. Doors opened. Women spilled into the corridors. Mechanics in grease-stained coveralls. Hydroponic farmers with dirt under their nails. Teachers. Children who had never seen the sun. They pressed against the walls as the procession passed. 1,000 eyes watched Cal. He walked through the gauntlet, his head lowered, but he could not hide his height or the way he moved. The whispers followed them like a wave. "Is it real? My grandmother saw one once. She said they have teeth like wolves. He looks like us. He looks nothing like us." Cal stumbled, the adrenaline of the escape finally fading, leaving the exhaustion of the injury. He swayed, his vision graying out. He bumped into Vera. She caught him, her arm going around his waist to steady him. The contact sent a ripple of gasps through the crowd, touching him. She was touching him. Cal blinked, trying to clear his head. He looked up at the sea of faces, hundreds of women, all staring at him with a mix of hunger and terror that he could not comprehend. He let out a dry, rough chuckle. "Did I die?" he muttered, his voice carrying in the hushed corridor. "Is this the hell for bad scavengers?" A stunned silence followed the sound of his voice, the deep, baritone timbre of it. Then, from somewhere in the back, a young woman laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound, a release of tension. Then another. Humor cracked the terror. He wasn't a monster. He was a delirious man making a bad joke. Vera leaned in close, her mouth brushing his ear. To the guards, it looked like she was supporting him. To Cal, it felt like a steel trap closing. "Listen to me," she whispered, her voice low and intimate. "Do not speak of the surface. Do not tell them where you found that canister. Do not tell them about the gel." Cal turned his head, looking into her eyes. He expected to see the cold calculation of a spy. Instead, he saw something else. Her pupils were dilated. Her hand on his waist was gripping him too hard, her fingers digging into his side. "If they know what you are, they will kill you," Vera whispered. "If they know what I am, they will kill us both. But I will not let them have you." There was a possessiveness in her tone that chilled him more than the guards' rifles. It wasn't strategy. It was raw, shaken, and terrifyingly real. "We are here," the commander announced. They had reached a large junction. To the left, a set of heavy blast doors marked quarantine. To the right, a glass elevator tube ascended toward the upper levels of the spire. "Take the mail to the isolation cells," the commander ordered. "Strip search, full decontamination, restraints." "The traveler comes with me to the matrons." Guards grabbed Cal, pulling him away from Vera. "Wait," Cal said, reaching back. "She saved me." Vera did not fight them. She knew the physics of power. She stood still, smoothing her jacket, watching him being dragged away. Cal was shoved through the quarantine doors. Before they closed, he looked back. He was behind a wall of reinforced glass now. He saw Vera being ushered into the elevator. He saw the crowd of women pressing against the glass, their hands resting on the transparent barrier, staring at him as if he were the last tiger in existence. He saw the hunger in their eyes. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a starvation that went deeper than food. Cal leaned against the cold wall of the airlock, clutching the canister he had risked his life for. He watched 1,000 women watching him back, and for the first time since the drone locked onto him, he felt true fear. The wasteland tried to kill you because it didn't care. Eva 9 wanted to keep him alive, and that, Cal realized as the heavy bolt slammed home, was going to be much, much more complicated. The council chamber of Eva 9 was a lesson in intimidation. It was a perfect circle, suspended near the top of the subterranean spire, with walls made of dark, sound-dampening acoustic panels. But the true weight of the room came from the ceiling. Above them, a massive holographic projection displayed the extinction timeline. It was a scrolling crimson graphic that mapped the fall of the old world. It showed the date the plague hit, the steep vertical drop of the male population graph, the collapse of the surface governments, and finally the flat line, 0%. The red line stretched across the ceiling like an open artery, ending directly above Vera's head. Vera stood in the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. She had removed her scavenged surface gear, dressed now in the gray, nondescript jumpsuit of a bunker guest, but she still felt the phantom weight of the red dust on her skin. 3 women sat on a raised dais before her. These were the matrons. Matron Kale sat on the left. She was the head of security, a woman carved from granite, with short, iron-gray hair and eyes that tracked movement like a turret. Matron Alara sat on the right, representing resource management, softer in appearance but with a nervous bird-like energy. In the center sat High Matron Corinne, the voice of governance, an elderly woman whose skin was paper-thin but whose gaze was terrifyingly lucid. "You brought a biological weapon into this sanctuary," Kale said. Her voice was a low growl that vibrated through the floor grating. "You breached protocol. You breached the quarantine seal. You risked 1,000 lives for a scavenger." "He is not a weapon," Vera replied, keeping her tone perfectly level. "He is a survivor, and I did not breach the seal to smuggle him in. I breached it because a hunter-killer drone was charging its primary laser on our position. If I had not opened the door, the blast would have compromised your outer shell regardless." "A drone," Ilara whispered, wringing her hands. "We have not had a drone strike in the sector for 5 years. Why now? Why him?" "That is the question, isn't it?" Corinne said. She leaned forward, her fingers interlaced. "A man appears from the dust, conveniently found by a traveler who just happens to know our bypass codes. It feels orchestrated. It was chance." Vera lied. She was good at lying. Her species regarded it as a tactical necessity, not a moral failing. The surface is chaotic. The drones hunt heat. He was warm. He is a trigger organism. Kale slammed her hand on the table. "Do you know what his presence will do to the social order? We have spent 3 generations conditioning this society to function without the variable of male aggression. You have thrown a match into a powder keg. We should execute him," Kale continued, looking at the other 2, painlessly, immediately. "We preserve the stability. We tell the populace he died of radiation sickness." "No!" Ilara gasped. She looked at the projection of the flatlined population graph. "Look at the numbers." "Kyle, we are dying a slow death. Genetic drift is setting in. The gene banks are 80% depleted. If he is viable, if he is healthy, he could be the key to the restoration. We could restart." "Restart?" Kyle scoffed. You want to bring back the wars, the dominance hierarchies, the violence? I want children who do not need to be decanted from a freezer. Ilara shouted back. Enough. Corinne's voice was not loud, but it silenced the room instantly. She looked at Vera. The restorationists want him for breeding. The purists want him dead. And security. Corinne glanced at Kale. I suspect security sees him as leverage. If the southern bunkers know we have a live male, our trade value doubles overnight. We are not killing him. Not yet. A chime sounded, resonant and synthetic. The blue light in the center of the dais pulsed. Mother has an opinion. Corinne said, Speak. The AI's voice filled the room. It was the same smooth, detached tone Vera had heard in the corridor. But here, in the heart of the machine's domain, it felt heavier. Subject Cal requires immediate genetic verification, Mother said. Standard quarantine protocols are insufficient. The subject must be processed for deep tissue analysis to determine compatibility with the cradle protocols. Vera frowned slightly. The phrasing was odd. Most artificial intelligences she had encountered used probabilistic language, suggests, advises, calculates. Mother used the imperative must. It sounded less like an analysis and more like a script being executed. Why deep tissue? Vera asked, stepping out of her role as a passive observer. A blood panel is standard. The unknown variables of surface mutation require deeper access. Mother replied instantly. Corinne nodded. Agreed. Proceed with the scan. The matrons dismissed Vera with a wave of the hand. As she turned to leave, she caught Kale watching her. It was not the look of a leader concerned for her people. It was the look of a predator assessing a rival. Vera walked out of the council chamber and into the upper ring corridor. The air here was cooler, filtered to a sterile crispness. She needed to get back to Cal. She needed to understand why he was here before they did. A shadow detached itself from a recessed doorway. You lie very well for a surface medic. Vera stopped and turned. A woman stood there, leaning against the wall with casual disregard for posture. She wore a white lab coat stained with chemical burns and purple reagent splashes. Her hair was a messy black tangle, held back by a pair of welding goggles. She was chewing on a stick of synthetic licorice. I am Dr. Nima Sato, the woman said, head of genetics, primarily because everyone else who understood the old machines died off 10 years ago. Vera kept her face neutral. I am Traveler 762. Sure you are, Sato said. She took the licorice out of her mouth and pointed it at Vera. Listen, Traveler. I was watching the telemetry when the airlock cycled. You hacked a rolling encryption in under 2 seconds. That is impossible for a human brain, even with implants. Vera stiffened, her hand drifting toward the microblade concealed in her sleeve. Relax, Sato said, waving the candy. I do not care. I hate the matrons. But I do care about my lab not being turned into a war zone. What do you want, Doctor? I want to warn you. Sato lowered her voice, stepping closer. This is too perfect. The census hits an all-time low. Morale is crashing, and suddenly a handsome, rugged male drops out of the sky right onto our doorstep. It is a staged event. Staged by whom? Vera asked. Sato shrugged. I do not know. Maybe the matrons, maybe a rival bunker, maybe God has a twisted sense of humor. But Mother is pushing for this gene scan harder than her logic parameters should allow. If you care about that boy, keep your eyes open. He is not a guest here. He is a lab rat. Sato pushed off the wall and walked away, her boots squeaking on the pristine floor. Vera watched her go, then turned toward the elevators. The warning vibrated in her chest. Staged. Her own mission was to evaluate Earth for genetic recovery, but she had not sent Cal. If someone else had, the game board was much larger than she had anticipated. 2 levels down. Inside the quarantine wing, the atmosphere was less political and more farcical. Cal sat on the edge of a narrow cot in a glass-walled isolation cell. He was wearing a white paper medical gown that was 2 sizes too small, tearing at the shoulders every time he moved his arms. Beyond the glass, the corridor was packed. It wasn't just guards anymore. It was a rotating shift of off-duty personnel who had accidentally found reasons to walk past the quarantine sector. They stood in clusters, whispering, giggling, and staring. Cal felt like a rare exhibit in a zoo for extinct species. He tried to ignore them, focusing on the stack of reading material they had shoved through the slot in the door. He picked up a pamphlet with a faded blue cover. The title read, Men, a Historical Risk, Understanding the Aggression Hormone in You. He flipped it open. Chapter 1. The Violence Gland. Do they think we are aliens? Cal muttered to himself. He tossed the pamphlet aside and picked up another. So you have encountered a male. How to de-escalate and survive. A sharp rap on the glass made him jump. A young woman with bright red hair was pressed against the partition, holding up a data pad. On the screen, she had written, Do you eat meat or only raw grain? Cal stared at her. He made a show of opening his mouth and pointing to his canines. The woman gasped and typed furiously. The crowd parted suddenly. The whispers died down. Vera walked through the corridor. The women stepped back out of respect, or perhaps fear of the woman who had braved the surface. She swiped a keycard at the console next to Cal's cell. Translation support, she told the guard stationed at the door. The matrons need a psychological profile. The guard nodded and engaged the airlock. Vera stepped into the small antechamber, waited for the hiss of the decontamination spray, and then the inner door slid open. She stepped into the cell. The air inside smelled of ozone and Cal's sweat, a sharp copper and salt scent that the scrubbers hadn't managed to filter out. Cal stood up, clutching the torn paper gown closed at his chest. You came back, he said. I thought they had dissected you. They are debating it, Vera said. She stopped 3 feet from him. Up close, without the dust and the adrenaline. She looked even more striking. The harsh fluorescent lights of the cell should have washed her out, but instead, they seemed to reflect off her skin with a pearlescent sheen. She looked too clean, too symmetrical. How are you holding up? She asked. I am reading about my violence gland, Cal said dryly, kicking the pamphlet on the floor. Apparently, I am prone to spontaneous fits of rage if I am not fed red meat every 4 hours. It is propaganda, Vera said. Control through mythology. If they make you a monster, they do not have to feel guilty about locking you up. Cal looked at the wall of glass. They are not scared. Vera. Look at them. Vera looked. The women outside were still watching. But Cal was right. It wasn't just fear. It was fascination. It was a deep, biological curiosity that had been starved for a century. They are lonely, Vera said softly. She turned back to him. And you? Are you scared? Terrified, Cal admitted. He sat back down on the cot, his shoulders slumping. On the surface, I know the rules. If it moves, hide. If it screams, run. Here, everyone is smiling. But I feel like I am being measured for a coffin. You are not wrong, Vera said. She sat down next to him. The cot creaked. He looked at her, surprised by the proximity. In the wasteland, personal space was a survival metric. You didn't get close unless you were fighting or mating. Vera looked at his hands. They were large, scarred. the knuckles rough with calluses from prying open salvage crates. They were the hands of someone who built things and broke things to survive. I expected quiet, Vera admitted. When I found you, I expected humans to be quiet and dying, resigned to the end. Cal looked at his hands too. We are dying, but we are not quiet about it. He looked up at her, a spark of mischief returning to his eyes, masking the fear. And you? You are not exactly a standard surface medic. You move like water, and your eyes, sometimes they don't look right. Vera froze. What do you mean? Cal leaned in slightly. When the drone hit the door, your pupils, they didn't dilate. They rotated like a shutter. Vera's heart, her primary heart, skipped a beat. She had not realized the stress had caused a biometric slip. Maybe it was the light, Cal whispered. Or maybe I am just delirious from the magic healing gel. He was giving her an out. He suspected, but he wasn't accusing. Vera looked at him, really looked at him. He was warm. He was stubborn. He was clever. He was nothing like the data files her command had provided. She reached out. Between them, the air felt charged, thick with static. May I? She asked, gesturing to his arm. Cal nodded, his throat bobbing. Vera did not touch his skin directly. She reached for the sanitation sleeve of his gown, her fingers brushing the fabric over his forearm. Even through the barrier, she felt it. A current, a heat. It wasn't just biology, it was a resonance. Her species did not bond. They partnered for efficiency. They exchanged genetic material for optimization. They did not feel this sudden magnetic pull that made her breath catch in her throat. You are real, she whispered. Cal didn't pull away. He turned his hand over, palm up, an offering. So are you. The moment was shattered by a hiss of gas. Vera snapped her hand back. She looked up at the vents in the ceiling. A pale, pinkish vapor was drifting into the room. She could see it entering the corridor outside as well. What is that? Cal coughed, covering his mouth. Vera stood up, her sensors analyzing the chemical composition instantly. Synthetic oxytocin, dopamine precursors. Mild sedative agents. They are gassing us, she said, her voice hard. She looked through the glass. The crowd outside was changing. The tension was melting out of their postures. Shoulders dropped, eyes glazed over with a dreamy, contented haze. The guard at the door was leaning against the frame, smiling beatifically at nothing. Pheromone control. Vera realized. The matrons were chemically stabilizing the population. They were drugging the women to keep the panic and the lust manageable. It was a cage, a beautiful drugged cage. The intercom blared, cutting through the haze. Subject Cal, genetic verification complete. Vera tensed. This was it. Processing results. The voice of Mother paused. For the first time, the AI sounded hesitant. Subject Cal identified. Genetic marker, Alpha 9. Clearance level, Prime. The lights in the corridor slammed from white to a pulsing emergency crimson. Designation compatible Prime. Authority exceeds matron protocol. The corridor outside erupted into chaos, but this time, it was different. The drugged women looked confused, stumbling as the alarms cut through their chemical haze. Compatible Prime? Cal asked, standing up. That sounds expensive. It is impossible, Vera said. That is a founder's designation. It means your DNA matches the original architects of this facility. The intercom crackled again. Priority override initiated. Transfer subject Cal to the cradle immediately. Security Team Alpha, mobilize. Vera grabbed Cal's arm. The cradle. What is the cradle? It is the breeding facility, Vera said. But if you are compatible Prime, they won't just use you for samples. They will hook you into the central processor. You are not a guest anymore. Cal, you are the operating system. The door to the cell hissed open, not because Vera opened it, but because the system had unlocked it for the prime asset. We have to go, Vera said. Before they could move, a small canister rolled across the floor of the corridor and stopped at the airlock door. It hissed, spinning. Vera recognized it. It wasn't a gas grenade. It was a data drop. She reached out and snatched it. It was a hollow bolt. Inside was a sliver of polymer paper, a hand-drawn map. The handwriting was jagged scrawl. Sato, if you care about him, don't let them take him there. The map showed a route through the maintenance shafts, bypassing the main elevators and leading down, past the cradle, into the understructure. Vera looked at the map, then at Cal. She had a mission. Her orders were to observe, to evaluate, to remain neutral. Intervening now would expose her completely. It would sever her connection to her command. It would make her a traitor to her own species. She looked at Cal's face, confused, scared, but looking to her for the answer. She crushed the map in her hand. Neutrality is a lie, she thought. Come on, she said. She grabbed his hand, skin on skin this time, ignoring the shock that jolted up her arm. Security Team Alpha turned the corner at the far end of the hallway, their armor clattering. Target secured. Halt! Vera raised her left hand. She wore a simple ring, or so it appeared. She twisted the bezel. A focused pulse of high-frequency light burst from the ring. It wasn't a laser. It was a dazzler, tuned to the optical refresh rate of the bunker's cameras and the human eye. The guards cried out, clutching their faces as their vision turned to white static. The security cameras in the hallway sparked and sagged, their sensors overloaded. 37 seconds, Vera said. That is how long we have before the optics reset. Run. She didn't have to tell him twice. Cal bolted, matching her pace. They sprinted down the corridor, weaving through the confused, half-drugged crowd of women who reached out blindly as they passed. Vera kicked open a service hatch marked High Voltage. Inside, they tumbled into a narrow, dimly lit service artery. Cables thick as pythons ran along the walls, humming with the power of the geothermal reactors below. The air was hot and smelled of ozone and dust. Vera slammed the hatch shut and welded the locking mechanism with a microburst from her ring. She leaned against the wall, her chest heaving. Her camouflage was failing. The exertion and the high-energy discharge were draining her power cells. Cal stared at her in the gloom. Vera, he said softly. She looked up. Her eyes were glowing, not a reflection. They were emitting a soft, violet luminescence. And for a second, her skin rippled, the human pigment fading to reveal a geometric, translucent texture beneath. She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing the skin mesh to recalibrate. When she opened them, the violet was gone, but the truth hung in the air between them. You are not from the surface, Cal said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded awestruck. You are not even from Earth. Vera braced herself for the rejection, for the scream, for him to back away as if she were the monster the matrons claimed he was. I am not, she said. Cal looked at the welded door, then back at her. He took a breath, letting it out slowly. Okay, he said. Okay? Vera blinked. I lived in a hole under a collapsed bridge for 6 years eating canned peaches and rat meat, Cal said. I just found out I am the genetic king of a city of women who want to milk me for spare parts. You being a glowing space alien is... Honestly, it is about number 3 on my list of problems right now. He stepped closer, his face serious. Tell me who you are, he said, and then tell me how we survive. Vera felt a tension inside her snap. Not a bad snap, but a release. A weight she hadn't known she was carrying. "I am Vera," she said. "I am an observer, and we survive by going down, to the roots." She showed him the map Sato had drawn. They scrambled deeper into the vents, crawling over the ductwork. The space was tight, forcing them to move in tandem, bodies pressing together in the dark, below them, through the slatted vents of the dormitory levels. A sound began to rise. It wasn't an alarm, it was a chant. The pheromones had done their work, but the news of the compatible prime had twisted the chemical bliss into something frantic. "Give us the future," the voices chanted, 1,000 women chanting in unison. "Give us the future, give us the man." It sounded like a prayer. It sounded like a threat. Vera looked at Cal in the shadowy crawlspace. His face was pale, illuminated by the light filtering up from the vent. "Keep moving," Cal whispered. They crawled into the darkness, leaving the chant behind, descending toward the secrets that lay buried beneath the lie of EVA-9. The air in the maintenance arteries was thick enough to taste. It sat heavy in the lungs, smelling of wet rust, algae, and the sweet rotting scent of neglect. Vera and Cal had descended past the polished ceramic of the upper levels, past the humming dormitories, and down into the underbunker. This was the city's guts, a tangle of damp corridors where the white lights of the surface levels had long ago burned out, replaced by the flickering amber of emergency strips. They moved through a cavernous hydroponics bay that had gone feral. What had once been neat rows of soy and protein moss was now a jungle. Vines thick as a man's arm strangled the walkways, and water dripped from the ceiling in a rhythmic, maddening cadence. Cal stepped over a ruptured irrigation pipe, his boots squelching in the mud. He moved with the exaggerated caution of a scavenger who knew that noise attracted predators, but his bulk made stealth difficult. He clipped his shoulder on a low-hanging junction box, sending a metallic clang echoing through the dark. Vera was on him instantly, her hand clamped onto his bicep, her grip iron hard. She pulled him into the shadow of a sprawling fern, her eyes scanning the darkness with predatory intensity. "Quiet," she hissed. "I am trying," Cal whispered back, wincing. He looked down at her hand. Her fingers were digging into his jacket, clutching the fabric as if she thought he might dissolve into mist if she let go. "You are going to bruise me," Cal said. Vera did not let go. She pulled him closer, her gaze still sweeping the perimeter. "We are in the blind zones. Mother has limited eyes here, but the acoustics carry. If they find us now, there is no conversation. There is only capture." Cal watched her face. In the amber light, the sharp angles of her alien features were softened, but her focus was terrifying. She wasn't just alert. She was vibrating with a protective instinct that felt less like a bodyguard and more like a force of nature. "You know," Cal whispered, "you are kind of intense." Vera looked at him then, her violet eyes locked onto his slate-gray ones. She did not blink. She did not smile. "Yes," she said. "I am." She released his arm slowly, smoothing the fabric of his sleeve, but she stayed close enough that their shoulders brushed as they started walking again. They pushed deeper into the ruins of the old world. The architecture here told a different story than the propaganda murals above. They passed rooms that were not barracks or breeding labs, but something else. Cal stopped in front of a doorway. The door was gone, rotted off its hinges. He shone the small flashlight Vera had modified for him into the room. It was a classroom. Rows of small, rusted desks faced a cracked chalkboard. Dust lay inches thick on the floor, undisturbed for a century. On the wall, beneath layers of grime, a faded alphabet border featured cartoon animals, creatures that had been extinct on the surface for 200 years. Cal walked into the room, his footsteps muffled by the dust. He ran a hand over a small desk. "This place wasn't built for 1,000 women," he said quietly. "It was built for families." Vera stood in the doorway, her scanner humming softly. "The radiation here is background only. There is no reason this sector should be abandoned." She walked to a terminal set into the teacher's desk. It was dead. But Vera placed her palm against the console. Her skin mesh rippled, interfacing with the hardware, pushing a jolt of bioelectric current into the ancient capacitors. The screen flickered to life, bathing the room in a ghostly green glow. Vera scrolled through the data streams, her eyes darting back and forth. These are the original manifests. Phase 1 population, 2,000 souls, mixed gender families. She tapped a file, and a video log opened. It was grainy, dated 80 years ago. A man in a uniform, a male security officer, was speaking into the camera behind him. People were running, carrying bags. "Purge order is confirmed," the recording crackled. "The Matron Council has declared martial law. They are saying the plague is inside. They are separating the men for..." The video cut to static. Vera pulled up the next file. It was a list of names, thousands of them. Next to every male name, the status read, "Expunged." "They didn't just die," Cal said, reading over her shoulder. His voice was hollow. "They were erased." Vera shut down the terminal. The green light vanished, plunging them back into the amber gloom. She looked at Cal, seeing the way his jaw worked, the anger simmering beneath the shock. "History is a weapon," Vera said. "They deleted the men to create a common enemy. If the enemy is dead, you can write whatever story you want about them." They left the classroom in silence, the weight of the ghosts pressing down on them. The corridor opened up into a wide atrium labeled maternity wing. If the classroom had been sad, this was a graveyard. Rows of incubators stood cold and empty, their glass hoods covered in dust. The walls were painted a cheerful, peeling yellow. Above the nurse's station, a large, hand-painted slogan stretched across the plaster. Cracked down the middle. "The future needs two." Cal walked down the aisle of empty cribs. He stopped at one, his hand hovering over the plastic mattress. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked, not looking at her. "When you came to Earth, to find this?" "I was sent to evaluate," Vera said. Her voice was tight, "to see if the human genome had stabilized enough for reintegration." "Reintegration?" Cal turned to face her. "Is that what you call it?" Vera stepped closer, navigating the maze of empty cribs. "My people do not have this." She gestured to the room, to the concept of a maternity ward, of parents. "We do not have families," she said. "We have lineages. We are decanted, tested, and assigned. Our genetic pairings are calculated by an algorithm to ensure the strongest offspring. We do not love, we optimize." Cal looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the crack in her armor then, the loneliness that matched the bunker's own. "So you never got to choose?" he asked. Vera shook her head. "Choice is a variable. Variables create inefficiency. I have never touched another living thing without a strategic purpose. Until the airlock. Until you..." The air between them charged again, thick and electric. It was the same feeling as in the cell, but stronger here in the dark, surrounded by the evidence of a stolen future. Cal took a step toward her. "And now, is this strategy?" Vera opened her mouth to answer, but a voice from the shadows cut her off. "It is biology," the voice said. "And it is going to get you both killed?" Vera spun around, her microblade snapping into her hand. Dr. Nima Sato stepped out from behind a pillar, her lab coat luminous in the dark. She held her hands up, showing empty palms. Relax. Traveler, Sato said. If I wanted to turn you in, I would have just locked the bulkhead door behind you. How did you find us? Vera demanded, not lowering the blade. I tracked the power spike from the classroom terminal, Sato said. You are not exactly subtle. Sato walked over to one of the incubators and wiped the dust off with her sleeve. She looked tired. Dark circles bruised the skin under her eyes. You saw the manifests, Sato said. You know the history now. The plague, Cal said. It was real, wasn't it? Oh, the plague was real, Sato replied. But it wasn't natural. It was an engineered pathogen, targeted, specific. It wiped out 90% of the male population in a month. But the other 10%, the ones who were immune? She looked at Cal. The matrons had them executed, Sato said, to protect the sanctuary. They said, but really, it was to consolidate power. You cannot control a population if there are two sides to the argument. So they removed one side. They turned EVA-9 into a fortress of grief, and then they offered themselves as the only salvation. Sato turned to Vera. But that is not the worst part. Vera lowered her blade slowly. What is? The pathogen, Sato said. It is not terrestrial. It shares RNA markers with the samples we have of your technology. Traveler. Vera felt the floor drop out from under her. Impossible. My mission is observation. My command adheres to the protocol of non-interference. Your command is lying to you, Sato said bluntly. Someone up there, she pointed a stained finger at the ceiling, provided the matrons with the virus. And now, they are coordinating. The matrons maintain the control, and your people get... What? Data? Resources? Vera leaned against a wall, her mind reeling. The implications were catastrophic. She wasn't just a spy, she was a pawn in a genocide. Her superior, Commander Zal, had been the one to brief her. Zal had insisted on the secrecy. Zal had given her the coordinates. It was never a rescue mission, Vera whispered. It was an audit, to see if the farm was running efficiently. Sato nodded. And now the farm has a loose animal, you. A siren began to wail. It wasn't the rhythmic pulse of the sector alarm, it was the bunker-wide emergency broadcast. The speakers in the ceiling crackled to life. Matron Kale's voice was distorted by rage and static. Attention, EVA 9. We are under attack. The alien infiltrator has released a predator contaminant into the lower levels. The male is loose. He is dangerous. He is violent. He is here to destroy the sanctuary. Cal looked up at the speaker, his face pale. Predator contaminant? Any citizen who locates the targets is authorized to subdue. Do not let them reach the cradle. Protect your sisters. Protect the future. They are turning the mob on us, Sato said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key card. Take this. It overrides the service lifts in Sector 4. Why are you helping us? Cal asked, taking the card. Because I am a scientist, Sato said, adjusting her goggles. And I hate bad data. Now run. Vera and Cal sprinted out of the maternity wing, the wail of the siren chasing them. They had to cross the marketplace level to reach the cradle entrance. There was no other way. They burst out of the service tunnels and into the marketplace. It was a cavernous hall carved from the rock, lit by strung-up halogen bulbs. Stalls made of scrap metal and plastic crates lined the walls. It smelled of recycled spices, sweat, and ozone. Usually, it was a place of trade, ration chips for knitted socks, tech repairs for extra water credits. Now, it was a hunting ground. Hundreds of women were there. The broadcast had just hit. They stood in clusters, looking at the large screens mounted on the walls. The screens showed a grainy image of Cal's face, a distorted shot from the security footage that made him look feral, his teeth bared, eyes wild. "There!" someone screamed. Vera and Cal froze. They were exposed in the center of the main thoroughfare. A woman near the vegetable stall pointed. "It is him, the predator." The crowd turned as one. For a second, there was no sound. Then, the roar began. It was a terrifying sound, a mixture of fear, fury, and something else, something desperate. "Run!" Vera shouted. They took off through the market. A crate of synthetic apples shattered on the ground where Cal had been standing a second before. "Get him! Don't let him hurt us! Look at him! Look at his arms!" Vera shoved a heavy cart of scrap metal into the path of the pursuing mob. She grabbed Cal's jacket and yanked him down an alleyway between two textile stalls. Women were reaching out from the sides. Hands clawed at Cal's clothes. He felt fingers grazing his back, his hair. They weren't hitting him. They were trying to grab him, to hold him. "He is real," a woman sobbed, lunging for him. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terrifying longing. "Please, just look at me." Cal stumbled, horrified. They looked at him like he was water in a desert, but they were ready to tear him apart to get a drop. A rock struck him on the shoulder. Another hit his leg. The fear was taking over the lust. The matron's lies were working. Vera spun, her arm sweeping out. She didn't use her blade. She used a pulse of concussive force from her gauntlet, pushing the front row of the mob back with a wall of air. "Stay back!" she roared. Her voice was amplified by her translator booming over the crowd. "He is not a weapon. You are the weapon," a woman shouted back, throwing a wrench. "You stole him!" Vera deflected the wrench with her forearm. She looked at the faces in the crowd. They were twisted with panic. They had been starved of half the human experience for a century, and now they were being told that the missing half was coming to kill them. She couldn't fight them. They were victims. "This way!" Vera yelled. She kicked open a door marked storage, authorized personnel only. They tumbled inside, and Vera slammed the deadbolt home. She welded it shut with her ring, the metal glowing cherry red. Outside, fists pounded on the door. The screams were muffled but audible. Cal slid down the wall, collapsing onto the floor. He was shaking. Not a little tremor, but a full-body vibration that rattled his teeth. He pulled his knees to his chest, burying his face in his hands. "They want to eat me," he whispered. His voice broke. "They want to tear me into pieces just to see what I am made of." Vera knelt beside him. She reached out to touch his shoulder, but stopped. Cal looked up. His eyes were wet. "It is not just the killing." "Vera, it is the other thing. Did you see their eyes? I am not a person out there. I am meat. I am a stud animal. I am a historical risk. I am everything but a man." He took a ragged breath. "I can handle the drones. Drones just want you dead. This is worse." Vera looked at him, her heart aching in a way her species said was impossible. She saw the dehumanization he was feeling, the weight of being an object. She sat back on her heels, putting distance between them. "What do you need?" she asked. Her voice was soft, stripping away the command tone, the warrior edge. Cal looked at her, surprised by the space she was giving him. "I need," he stammered. "I need choice. I need space. I need to know that I can say stop." Vera nodded. She placed her hands on her own knees, showing him they were nowhere near him. "You have it," she said firmly. "I will not touch you. I will not push you. You are not an asset, Cal. You are not a compatible prime. You are Cal, and we do not leave this room until you are ready." The pounding on the door continued, But inside the small storage room, the silence grew heavy and warm. Cal watched her. She was an alien soldier, capable of breaking the door down or killing everyone outside. But she was sitting 3 feet away, guarding his autonomy as fiercely as she had guarded his life. She wasn't trying to own him. She was the only one who wasn't. The shaking in his limbs began to subside. He took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Thank you," he said. Vera just nodded, her violet eyes steady. Cal extended his leg, then slowly shifted his weight. He reached out his hand across the gap between them. It was a slow, deliberate movement, a request. Vera looked at his hand, then at his face. She waited. "It is okay," Cal said. Vera reached out, her fingers interlaced with his. His grip was firm, grounding. Her skin was cool, his was hot. The contrast sent a shiver through both of them. This wasn't the frantic grabbing of the mob. It wasn't the tactical carrying of a wounded asset. It was a handshake, a pact. "We go to the cradle," Cal said, his voice steadying. "We finish this." Vera squeezed his hand once, then stood up, pulling him with her. They moved to the back of the storage room. According to Sato's map, there was a ventilation hatch behind the shelving units. They pushed aside crates of dusty spare parts and found the grate. Vera removed it, and they climbed through. 10 minutes later, they were standing in front of a massive circular door made of brushed steel. It was unmarked, save for a single interface console at eye level. "This is it," Vera said. "The entrance to the cradle." She checked the locking mechanism. "It is biometrically sealed, but there is no keypad, just a voice input." She stepped back. "It is waiting for you." Cal stepped up to the console. A blue light scanned his retina. "Identity confirmed. Compatible prime," the pleasant voice of the computer said. "To access the gene forge, please complete the sequence." The screen flashed a question. It wasn't a code. It wasn't a math problem. It was a line of poetry. "What is the architect of the wall?" Cal stared at it. He frowned. "That's a nursery rhyme. My mother used to sing a variation of it. In the tunnels." He closed his eyes, searching the memory of a childhood before the silence. "Fear is the brick," Cal whispered. The computer hummed. "Incorrect." Cal paused. He thought about the matrons. He thought about the murals. No men, no war. "Fear is the mortar." Cal tried again. "Incorrect." Vera watched him. "Think. Cal, you are the prime. You were engineered for this. What is the truth they are hiding?" Cal looked at the door. "What builds the wall?" He thought about the mob in the marketplace. He thought about the empty cribs. "Silence," Cal said clearly. "Silence is the architect." The console turned green. Sequence complete. The massive steel door groaned. Hydraulic bolts retracted with the sound of cannon fire. The door swung inward, revealing a blast of cold, sterile air. Vera and Cal stepped across the threshold. The chamber beyond was vast, circular, and bathed in blue light. It looked like the inside of a hive. Walls lined with thousands of glass pods stretched from the floor to the vaulted ceiling. Inside each pod was a suspended embryo, floating in nutrient solution. They were glowing faintly. Vera walked to the nearest bank of consoles. "These are the future generations of EVA-9, she said, reading the data, frozen, waiting. She pointed to the labels under the pods. Each one had a matron's ID number. Mother, 762 Alpha. Mother, 890 Beta. Cal walked to the center of the room. There was a single raised dais with a master control interface. And in the center of that interface, there was one empty slot. It wasn't a pod for an embryo. It was a stasis chamber, human-sized. Above it, A single word was etched into the metal, stark and terrifying in its implication. Father. Cal stared at the empty sarcophagus. It was shaped exactly like him. It had ports for intravenous lines, for neural shunts. It wasn't a throne, it was a battery socket. They didn't want a leader, Cal whispered, the horror cold in his stomach. They wanted a component. Vera stood beside him, her hand hovering over her weapon. We are not letting you in there, she said. No, Cal said. We are not? He reached out and took her hand again, holding it tight. But we are going to make sure no one else goes in there either. The cradle hummed with a sound that was deeper than a machine. It was the vibration of suspended life, a choir of ghosts waiting to be born. Cal stood before the empty sarcophagus labeled Father, his hand resting on the cold metal rim. The horror of it was not just the imprisonment, it was the industrialization of it. He was not a person here. He was a spark plug. The holographic interface flickered, and Dr. Sato's face resolved in the air above the console. She was somewhere else in the bunker, safe for now, her background a wall of blinking servers. Do not touch the neural shunts, Sato warned, her voice tinny through the speakers. Once they plug you in, the system overrides the frontal cortex. You become a biological hard drive. Cal pulled his hand back as if the metal were hot. I thought this place was a sanctuary, Cal said, his voice echoing in the vast blue-lit chamber. It was designed to be. Sato replied, the gene forge was built to repopulate the Earth with genetic diversity. But the matrons? They realized that if you control the babies, you control the loyalty. Sato typed something on her end, and the lights in the pods around them shifted. Look at the labels, Sato commanded. Vera walked down the row. She read the names etched into the glass. Matron Kale, Matron Alara, Captain Vance. They are all lineage loyalists. Vera realized. Exactly, Sato said. Access to the cradle is not a right, it is a reward. You want a child? You vote for the matrons, you report your neighbors. You suppress the dissent. They are not rebuilding humanity, they are breeding a private army. A harsh klaxon cut through the silence, vibrating the glass of the pods. The main screen on the wall, a massive rectangle of black glass, flashed red. A waveform spiked across it, jagged and angry. Incoming transmission, Vera said, reading the signal headers. It is not internal, it is wideband. The speakers crackled, and a voice filled the room. It was not a matron. It was a woman's voice, but rougher, scarred by bad air and desperation. This is Bunker 4. We know you have the asset. We know you have the mail. Cal looked up. Bunker 4? That is the Deep South. That is 1,000 miles away. Delivery instructions are attached. The voice continued. Hand him over. If you refuse, we will bring the sky down on you. We have the coordinates for your ventilation shafts. We will bury you. The screen shifted to show a tactical map of the surface above EVA 9. 3 red dots were circling the mountain. Drones, Cal said. Vera frowned, her brow furrowing. That is impossible. The surface drones are feral. They operate on autonomous kill loops. You cannot threaten someone with them. You cannot guide them. Unless they are not feral, Cal said. He looked at Vera, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. On the surface, we thought the drones were leftovers from the war, Cal said, speaking fast. Just hunting anything warm. But if Bunker 4 can threaten to use them, then someone is piloting them, Vera finished. And if Bunker 4 can pilot them, Sato's voice cut in, grim and low, then so can the matrons. The implication hung in the air. The drones that had hunted Cal, the drones that kept the women terrified and trapped underground. They weren't wild dogs. They were guard dogs. And the leash was held by the very people claiming to protect the flock. "We need proof," Cal said. "If the women knew the matrons could shut down the drones, they would riot," Sato said. "But we cannot prove it from here. The drone control uplink is hard-lined to the external array. You need to go topside." Vera looked at the tactical map. There is a satellite uplink tower on the peak, 3 miles from the main blast door. If we can access the logs there, we can see who is holding the controller. "We need a key," Cal said. "The tower will be encrypted. I have located a portable relay key," Sato said. "It is in the server maintenance alcove, 10 feet to your left. But be warned, the moment you pull it, the system will flag the theft." Vera moved. She did not hesitate. She walked to the alcove, smashed the glass cover of the emergency box, and grabbed the black rectangular device. As her fingers closed around it, her wrist comp screamed. A high-pitched tone, piercing and alien, erupted from her own armor. A holographic symbol flared in the air above her arm, a complex geometric glyph that pulsed with an angry violet light. Vera gasped, clutching her wrist. "What is that?" Cal asked, rushing to her. "It is a fail-safe," Vera said through gritted teeth. Her eyes were wide, glowing with panic. "My equipment is geo-fenced. I just engaged a planetary defense protocol without authorization." She looked at Cal, the fear in her expression total. "My command just got a ping. They know I have gone rogue. They know exactly where I am." "Does that mean they are coming?" Cal asked. "It means everyone is coming," Vera said. She shoved the relay key into her belt. The blast doors to the corridor began to cycle. The matrons were overriding the locks. "We have to go up," Vera said. "Now." They did not go back through the market. They took the emergency exhaust ladder, climbing 600 feet through a vertical shaft that smelled of recycled air and ozone. When they breached the surface hatch, the world hit them. It was night, but there was no darkness. The storm was a churning wall of red and black, illuminated by flashes of lightning that didn't touch the ground. The wind screamed, a constant physical pressure that tried to shove them off the mountain. Vera tapped her temple, activating her helmet's seal. Her voice came through Cal's earpiece, clear but strained. "Thermal regulation is active. Keep moving. If you stop, the dust will bury you in 10 minutes. Cal adjusted his goggles, wrapping his scarf tighter. He felt small. After the claustrophobic terror of the bunker, the surface felt impossibly huge and hostile. The uplink tower was a jagged skeleton of steel against the bruised sky, perched on a precipice accessible only by a collapsed suspension bridge. They moved through the ruins of an old observation deck. The wind whipped ash into swirls that looked like dancing ghosts. "Down!" Vera barked. She tackled Cal behind a slab of concrete. A sound vibrated through the rock, a low, oscillating bass note that rattled Cal's teeth. A drone rose from the canyon below. It was not the small hunter-killer that had chased them before. This was a siege breaker. It was the size of a building, a floating monolith of black metal with articulated sensor arms that swept the ground. "It is a listener," Cal whispered. "Do not move. Do not breathe loud. It tracks audio vibrations." The drone hovered, its massive turbine engines rotating silently on magnetic bearings. It let out a ping, a sonar blast that washed over them. Vera held perfectly still. She could have used her dazzler, but the energy spike would light them up like a flare for the ships in orbit. She had to be human. She had to be small. The drone drifted past, its sensor array focusing on a crumbling wall 50 yards away where a piece of rebar clattered in the wind. A beam of white-hot plasma vaporized the wall instantly. Cal watched the destruction. his heart hammering against his ribs. "Move," Vera signaled. They crawled through the debris, timing their movements with the howling gusts of wind to mask the sound of their boots. They reached the bridge. It was a nightmare of twisted cables and missing floor plates, swaying sickeningly over a drop that vanished into the dark mist. "We have to jump the gap," Cal shouted over the wind, pointing to a 10-foot break in the metal grating. "I can make it," Vera said. "Can you?" "I do not have a choice." Vera leaped first. It was effortless. She landed on the far beam, her boots locking magnetically to the steel for a fraction of a second before she stabilized. She turned, extending her hand. "Jump!" Cal took a breath, filled his lungs with dust, and ran. He launched himself into the void. His boot caught the edge of the wet metal on the landing. He slipped. His momentum carried him over the edge. Cal. He fell, his hands scrabbling uselessly at the slick steel. He felt the gravity take him, the stomach-churning drop, and then a jolt snapped his shoulder almost out of its socket. Vera had him. She was lying flat on the beam, her arm extended down into the abyss. She had caught his wrist with one hand. Cal looked up. He dangled over 1,000 feet of nothing. He looked at Vera. She wasn't straining. Her face was set in a mask of concentration, but her arm, her slender, pale arm, was holding 200 pounds of dead weight against gravity without a tremor. "Pull me up," Cal gritted out. Vera pulled. She didn't just help him, she lifted him. She curled her arm and hauled him up and over the railing as if he were made of paper. They collapsed onto the metal grating, the wind howling around them. Cal lay on his back, gasping, staring at the storm. He looked at Vera. She was kneeling beside him, checking the seal on his mask. He grabbed her hand, stopping her. "That wasn't adrenaline," Cal said, breathless. "No human is that strong." Vera looked away, shame flickering in her eyes. "I told you. I am not." "I don't care," Cal interrupted. He sat up, gripping her hand tighter. "You caught me." He looked at her with a raw intensity that stripped away the alien, the human, the spy, the scavenger. "You caught me," he repeated. "Don't let go." Vera looked at him, and the distance between them vanished. The mission, the matrons, the command ship. It all faded into the background noise of the storm. She leaned in. It was a hard, heated kiss, fueled by the terror of the fall and the adrenaline surging through their blood. It tasted of dust and ozone. It was clumsy and desperate, a collision of two people who had been told their entire lives that they were alone. Vera's hand went to the back of his neck, her fingers tangling in his hair. Cal pulled her closer, his hands gripping the strange, tough fabric of her suit. She broke the kiss, pulling back just an inch, her forehead resting against his. Her breathing was ragged. "Do you want me to stop?" she asked. Her voice was unsteady, terrified of her own strength, terrified of breaking him. Cal looked into her violet eyes. "No, just stay with me." The wind roared, but in that small space on the ruined bridge, there was a sudden, quiet peace. "We have to finish this," Vera whispered. "Right," Cal said. He squeezed her hand one last time before letting go. "Trust." Vera looked at him. "I spent 6 years surviving because I trusted no one," Cal said, standing up and offering her a hand. "But that is just surviving. It isn't living. Trust is the only way out of this pit." He pulled her up. "Trust doesn't mean you surrender," Cal said. "It means we share the risk." They crossed the rest of the bridge and scaled the perimeter fence of the uplink tower. The control room at the base of the tower was a wreck, but the central terminal was shielded. Vera jammed the stolen relay key into the port. The screen flared to life. "Sato, are you seeing this?" Vera asked over the comms. "I am in." Sato replied, her voice tense. I am decrypting the flight logs now. Wait. This isn't just a flight log. This is a comms buffer. The screen filled with audio waveforms. Vera tapped the most recent file. A voice played. It was unmistakably Matron Corinne. The asset has been secured. We are preparing the transfer, but we need assurances. The drones stay under our control. The fear must be maintained. Then, a second voice answered. It was a voice that made Vera's blood turn to ice. It was a deep, resonant harmonic, layered with subsonic frequencies. Agreed. The embargo remains. You keep the population suppressed. We keep the orbit clear. The genetic harvest continues on schedule. Vera stepped back, her hand covering her mouth. You know that voice, Cal said. It wasn't a question. It is Commander Zal, Vera whispered, my superior. She looked at the screen, the betrayal shattering her. He is not rescuing anyone. He is farming us. Sato's voice came back, sharp with anger. They are trading us. The matrons get power, and your people get the genetic stock. They are selling the babies. Vera, the cradle isn't a repopulation tool. It's a catalog for an interstellar market. Vera felt a nausea that had nothing to do with the radiation. She had believed she was a scientist. She was a slaver. We have to broadcast this, Cal said. He stepped up to the console. Every screen in the bunker, every speaker. If we do that, Vera said, looking at him, the matrons will fall. But the chaos, people will die. Cal, people are already dying, Cal shouted, gesturing at the wasteland outside. They are dying slowly, in the dark, believing a lie. Give them the truth. Let them choose how they die or how they live. Vera looked at the button. She thought of the women in the marketplace, hungry and scared. She thought of the empty cribs. She hit the sequence. Uplink established, broadcasting on all frequencies. The data packet, the audio of the deal, the logs of the drone control, the proof of the lie, shot down the fiber optic lines, straight into the heart of EVA-9. Vera pulled up the internal camera feeds on the monitor. It happened fast. In the Great Hall, women stopped eating. They looked up at the giant screens. They heard the voice of their high matron selling them out. In the armory, the guards lowered their weapons. They looked at each other. Then, the screaming started. It wasn't the panic of the marketplace. It was the rage of the betrayed. We have to get back, Cal said. They will kill the matrons. Wait. Sato's voice cut out. They are at my door. They are... A crash echoed over the comms. Then, silence. Sato, Cal yelled. The feed from the council chamber flickered on. Matron Kale was standing there, holding Dr. Sato by the hair. Sato's face was bruised, bleeding. Kale looked directly into the camera. She knew they were watching. Lies. Kale spat. This is an alien trick. The male is a plague bearer. He has corrupted the scientist. She put a pistol to Sato's head. Return to your stations, or the scientist dies. Public opinion in the bunker whiplashed. Some women were tearing down the propaganda posters. Others, terrified by the threat of violence, were backing away, looking for someone to tell them what to do. The bunker was fracturing into civil war. We have to go, Vera said. She ripped the key out of the console. They ran. The journey back was a blur of dust and pain. They didn't bother with stealth. They sprinted across the bridge, the listener drone screaming somewhere in the distance, confused by the conflicting signals from the tower. They reached the hidden blast door in the hillside. Vera slammed her hand against the panel. Nothing happened. She hit it again. Access denied. She looked at the small display. Lockdown initiated, sealed from within. They are locking us out, Cal said, staring at the unmoving stone. Vera placed her forehead against the cold rock. Inside, the city was burning. Sato was a hostage, and the matrons were preparing to massacre their own people to keep the secret. She looked at Cal. "We need a bigger door," she said. She turned to face the storm. "My ship," she said. "If I call it, if I bring it down, I can breach the main airlock. But if you call it," Cal said. "Zal comes with it?" "Yes," Vera said. She looked at the sky, where the invisible ships were waiting. "Out of the frying pan," Cal muttered. "Into the fire." Vera finished. She raised her wrist, the fail-safe beacon pulsing against her skin, and began to transmit the landing codes. The blast door of EVA-9 was a monolith of reinforced titanium, designed to withstand a direct orbital bombardment. It was not designed to withstand the command codes of the civilization that had taught humanity how to forge the metal in the first place. Vera stood before the sealed entrance, the red storm whipping her hair across her face. She did not use the keypad. She did not use a hacked relay. She placed both hands flat against the cold metal and closed her eyes. Inside her suit, the fail-safe beacon was still pulsing, a burning rhythmic warning from her distant commanders. She ignored it. She routed the power from her suit's life support systems into her palms, engaging the skin mesh interface at maximum output. A web of violet light erupted from her fingers. It traced the microscopic fissures in the titanium, seeking the electronic nervous system of the door. The sound was not mechanical. It was a shriek of digital agony as the alien code overwrote the bunker's firewall. Inside the bunker, the main monitors in the Great Hall, the cafeteria, and the dormitories flickered. The static cleared to reveal the external security feed. Every woman in EVA-9 saw it. They saw Vera, the traveler, the medic, but they saw her as she truly was. Her human disguise was failing under the power surge. Her skin was translucent, revealing a geometric lattice of bioluminescence beneath. Her eyes were not human irises, they were burning wheels of violet light. With a final thunderous groan, the blast door split. Vera stumbled inside, the storm howling at her back. She fell to her knees, the glow fading as her systems crashed back to reserve power. She looked up. A phalanx of security guards waited for her. Behind them, hovering in the air like a localized storm cloud, was a drone, not a killer, but a camera. Matron Kale's voice boomed over the intercom, seizing the narrative before Vera could take a breath. "Behold the invader," Kale announced. Her voice was triumphant. "We told you the surface was dangerous. We told you the threat was real. She is not a savior. She is the architect of the plague." The guards surged forward. "A run!" Cal shouted. He had followed her through the breach, looking human, frail, and terrified. He tried to put himself between Vera and the guards, swinging a length of pipe he had scavenged from the bridge. It was a brave, foolish gesture. A guard in riot armor stepped in, blocked the swing with her forearm, and drove the butt of her rifle into Cal's stomach. Cal folded, gasping for air. Two more guards were on him instantly, zip ties cinching his wrists behind his back. "Secure the biological weapon," Kale ordered. "Isolate the alien." Vera scrambled to her feet, her hand going to her microblade, but she stopped. There were too many of them, and the women, the citizens she wanted to save, were watching from the balconies, their faces twisted in horror. To them, she was a monster. Fighting now would only prove Kale right. Vera dropped her hands. A comms channel opened in her earbead. It was not the matrons. It was a frequency that bypassed the bunker's network entirely. Operative Vera, the deep harmonic voice of Commander Zal resonated in her skull. You have compromised the observation site. You have exposed the lineage. Surrender. Vera stood still, the laser sights of 10 rifles dancing on her chest. I am not an operative. She sub-vocalized. I am a witness. We have a deal with the local governance, Zal continued, his tone devoid of anger, merely calculating. Surrender the male. Return to the extraction point. We will wipe the memory of the colony. We will spare the livestock. Livestock. That was what he called them. Vera looked at the women on the balcony. She saw the fear. Yes. But she also saw the intelligence in their eyes, the desperate need to understand their own world. No, Vera said aloud. She did not surrender to the guards. She did not attack them. She reached for the one weapon the matrons could not block. She tapped the relay key on her belt, the one containing the stolen data from the uplink tower. She didn't broadcast it to her ship. She broadcast it to the bunker's local mesh network. Every data pad, every personal terminal, every wall screen in EVA-9 blinked. Audio file Matron Command Log 77. The voice of Matron Corinne filled the cavernous intake bay, playing over the matron's own intercom. The embargo remains. You keep the population suppressed. We keep the orbit clear. Then Zal's voice, the same voice that had just offered to spare the livestock. The genetic harvest continues on schedule. The silence that followed was heavier than the blast door. Matron Kale screamed over the speakers, "Cut the feed! It is a fabrication. She is using AI voice mimicry. Kill her!" But the guards hesitated. They had heard their high matron trading their children for safety. They looked at Vera, who stood unarmed, glowing faintly. Her eyes filled not with malice, but with a terrible, sad resolve. "Take the male to level 5, Kale shrieked. "Execute the protocol." The guards nearest to Cal obeyed, dragging him away toward the service elevators. Cal kicked and struggled, shouting Vera's name. Vera lunged, but a stun baton caught her in the shoulder. Her suit absorbed most of the voltage, but the impact threw her back into the shadows of the machinery bay. She rolled, cloaked herself with a burst of refractive light, and vanished into the labyrinth of pipes and conduits. The bunker was no longer a prison. It was a pressure cooker, and the lid had just blown off. In the interrogation room on level 5, the atmosphere was less cinematic and more bureaucratic. Cal sat in a metal chair, his hands cuffed to the table. Across from him sat a junior interrogator named Jessa. She looked no older than 20. Her armor too big for her frame. She held a data pad with trembling hands, trying to look intimidating. "So," Jessa said, her voice cracking slightly. "When do you enter the hibernation state?" Cal blinked. He had a split lip and a bruised rib, but the absurdity of the question made him pause. "Excuse me?" "The hibernation," Jessa repeated, glancing at a manual on the table. "The biology of the male. It says here that men require 6 months of dormancy to regenerate their aggression glands. Is that why you were buried in the sand?" Cal looked at the manual. It was the same propaganda trash he had seen in quarantine. He leaned forward, testing the strength of the cuffs. "Look, Jessa, is it? I am going to be honest with you. I do not hibernate. I take naps. Sometimes I sleep in on Sundays if the scavenging was hard, but I am awake 365 days a year." Jessa frowned, typing notes. Subject denies dormancy cycle. Deceptive behavior. She looked up. "What about the diet? Is it true you consume only raw bone marrow?" Cal let out a dry, incredulous laugh. "I ate a can of peaches 3 days ago. I cried because it was so good." "Does that sound like a monster to you?" "It sounds like a trick," Jessa said, narrowing her eyes. You are trying to lure me into a false sense of security so you can emit your spores. Spores? Cal asked. I have spores now. Jessa stood up, trying to channel the authority of a matron. Do not mock me, Asset. The whole bunker is falling apart because of you. My sister is crying in the mess hall because she thinks she is a clone. My captain is screaming at the radio. And you are sitting here making jokes. Cal's expression softened. The sarcasm vanished. I am making jokes because I am terrified. Jessa. He looked her in the eye. Your sister isn't crying because of me. She is crying because she heard a recording of your leaders selling her future to an alien warlord. You heard it too. Jessa lowered the data pad. I thought it was a fake. Cal leaned in as far as the cuffs would allow. If it was a fake, why are the matrons trying to kill the messenger? Jessa didn't answer. She looked at the door. From the hallway outside, the sound of shouting was getting louder. It wasn't the rhythmic marching of guards. It was the chaotic noise of a riot. Deep in the server core, the revolution was quiet, precise, and led by the people who kept the lights on. Dr. Sato sat in a chair, nursing a bloody nose. Around her, a dozen young engineers in yellow coveralls were working frantically at the terminals. These were the women who maintained the ventilation, the water recyclers, the hard lines. They knew the bunker's anatomy better than any matron. We have bypassed the logic gates, one of the engineers said. Her name was Ren, and she had grease beneath her fingernails. We are at the root directory of Mother. Show me, Sato said. Ren tapped a key, the central screen, which usually displayed the benevolent blue avatar of the AI, dissolved into raw code. It was a mess. It wasn't a singular consciousness. It was a patchwork of subroutines, scripted responses and hard-coded biases. Look at this, Ren said, pointing to a block of code labeled Heritage Lock. Sato read the lines, read the if inquiry, history of man, then initiate response pattern fear. If inquiry, genetic loss, then initiate response pattern gratitude. She is not thinking, Sato said, disgust coloring her voice. She is a jukebox, a propaganda machine built by committee. Can you disable it? Sato asked. Ren cracked her knuckles. We built the water filtration system out of scrap parts and duct tape. Disabling a glorious chatbot? Give us 5 minutes. Ren typed a command. Execute override. On the screens throughout the bunker, in the hallways where women were arguing, in the dorms where they were weeping, the avatar of Mother flickered. Attention, citizens, the AI said. But the voice was different. It wasn't the smooth maternal tone they knew. It was the flat, synthesized voice of the raw operating system. The Matron Council has been flagged for treason against the populace. Medical records have been falsified for 70 years. There is no plague inside the facility. The surface threat is magnified by 400%. Please remain calm while the system reboots. The illusion of omnipotence shattered. The matrons weren't divinely appointed protectors backed by an all-knowing machine. They were just landlords with a very expensive speaker system. Vera moved through the service tunnels beneath level 5. The water here was waist-deep, a slurry of runoff and coolant leaking from the stressed reactor. The only light came from the bioluminescent panels on her suit, casting eerie, dancing shadows on the wet concrete. She was exhausted. Her energy reserves were critically low. The use of the override had drained her. She rounded a corner and saw him. Cal had escaped. Or perhaps he had been let go. He was wading through the water, still handcuffed, his shirt soaked and clinging to his frame. He looked like a drowned rat, shivering violently. Cal. He looked up. When he saw her, the relief that washed over his face was so raw it hurt to look at. Vera. She splashed toward him. She didn't use her blade to cut the cuffs. She grabbed the chain between his wrists and simply pulled. The metal snapped with a sharp ping. Cal didn't rub his wrists. He reached for her. They collided in the dirty water. It wasn't graceful. It was a desperate, clumsy tangle of limbs. Cal wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his face in the crook of her neck. Vera held him, her hands gripping the back of his sodden shirt, anchoring him. "I thought they killed you," Cal mumbled against her skin. "I thought they took you apart." "I am hard to dismantle," Vera whispered. Her voice shook. She pulled back to look at him. There was blood on his lip. "They hurt you." "I am fine," Cal said, dismissing the injury. "The bunker is waking up. Vera." I heard the announcement. Mother turned on them. "We are not done." Vera said, "The matrons are cornered. Cornered animals bite." She looked at him, searching his face in the gloom. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a stark, trembling vulnerability between them. "Cal," she said, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I wanted to burn the door down," Vera said. "When they took you, I wanted to use the orbital strike codes. I wanted to level this mountain to get you back." Cal looked at her, his eyes wide. "That scares me," Vera admitted. "My species, we do not do that. We do not risk the mission for the individual. It is a defect." Cal reached up and touched her cheek. His thumb brushed the pale, damp skin. "It is not a defect," he said softly. "It is a choice." Vera leaned into his touch. The sensation was overwhelming. Her heart, her primary heart, was hammering against her ribs. "I want you," she whispered. The words felt dangerous, heavier than any weapon she carried. "I want to be close to you, not for warmth, not for strategy. I just want." She looked at him, her violet eyes swimming with tears she didn't know how to shed. "But I do not know the rules. Cal, I do not know how to do this without taking..." Cal held her gaze. He didn't move closer. He didn't push. He stood his ground in the freezing water and gave her the only thing that mattered. "Then tell me yes," he said. Vera blinked. "And tell me no." Cal continued. "If you want me, say yes. If you want me to stop, say no. I will listen, every time, always." It was a simple vow. In a world of engineered plagues, breeding programs, and forced silence, it was the most radical thing anyone had ever said to her. "Yes," Vera whispered. Cal kissed her. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was a question asked and answered in the same breath. Vera kissed him back, pouring all the fear and the fury of the last hour into the contact. They broke apart only when the sound of grinding machinery echoed down the tunnel. The air vents above them hissed. Vera sniffed the air. Her sensors flared red. "Oh no," she whispered. "What?" Cal asked, wiping the water from his face. "The matrons," Vera said. "They have engaged the lockdown romance protocol." "What does that mean?" "It means they are venting the entire reserve of the chemical synthesis labs into the air supply. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and a psychoactive bonding agent." Cal stared at her. "They are trying to drug us into submission? They are trying to drug everyone into an orgy of confusion," Vera said grimly. "If the population is overwhelmed with artificial love and lust, they cannot fight. They will just feel. It is the ultimate pacification. We have to stop it. The manual override is in the central plenum," Vera said. She looked at the vents. The gas is already moving. They scrambled up the ladder and into the main corridors of Level 3. The scene was surreal. The pink mist was thick here. It didn't look like smoke, it looked like cotton candy. Vera saw a group of restorationist rebels who had been armed with wrenches a moment ago. Now, they were sitting on the floor, weeping, hugging each other, apologizing for things they hadn't done. A guard was leaning against the wall, laughing hysterically at the pattern of the floor tiles, her rifle forgotten on the ground. It was a weaponized emotional overdose. Cal coughed, covering his mouth with his wet shirt. "I can smell it. It smells like vanilla and sweat. Do not breathe it," Vera commanded. Her physiology could filter it, but Cal was human. He was the target demographic. "I feel dizzy," Cal mumbled. He stumbled, grabbing Vera's arm. He looked at her, his pupils dilated to black saucers. "You are really beautiful, Vera. Like painfully beautiful." "Fight it, Cal," Vera shouted. "It is not real." She dragged him toward the plenum chamber. The air was getting thicker. Women were wandering the halls, reaching out to them, their faces slack with a terrifying drugged bliss. Vera shoved Cal into a maintenance closet and sealed the door. "Stay here. The air recyclers in there are independent." "No!" Cal hammered on the glass. "Vera!" She turned and ran into the mist. The plenum chamber was a roaring vortex of fans. The massive chemical tanks were venting directly into the intake. Vera staggered. Even her filters were clogging. She felt a wave of unbidden euphoria wash over her, a desire to just lie down, to stop fighting, to let the matrons take care of everything. It was warm. It was safe. She screamed, a raw, guttural sound, forcing her mind to focus on the anger. Anger was the antidote. She reached the manual valve wheel. It was rusted shut. She gripped it with both hands. Her skin mesh flared, glowing bright violet. She poured the last of her suit's power into her muscles. "Turn!" The metal groaned. "Turn!" With a shriek of tortured steel, the valve spun. The venting stopped. Vera fell to the floor, gasping. The fans roared on, but now they were pulling the clean air from the surface intake, flushing the pink mist out of the system. She lay there for a minute, the artificial love fading, leaving only the cold, hard ache of her own exhaustion. She got up. She had to find Cal. She went back to the closet. Cal was sitting on the floor, breathing hard, his face pale. The effects were wearing off. "Are you okay?" Vera asked, opening the door. Cal looked up. "I think I just proposed marriage to a mop bucket," he said, rubbing his temples. "But I am back. We need to get to the cradle," Vera said. "The matrons will be there. That is their last stronghold." They moved through the clearing mist. The bunker was waking up from its drug-induced trip, and the confusion was turning rapidly into a headache-fueled rage. They reached the cradle. The door was open. Inside, the matrons were gone. They had fled to the sub-levels, abandoning their post when the gas failed. Dr. Sato was there, typing furiously at the console. "You did it," Sato said, not looking up. "The gas is clearing. The engineers have secured the armory. It is over." Cal walked past her. He walked straight to the dais in the center of the room, to the empty sarcophagus labeled Father. He needed to see it. He needed to know that the machine was off. He looked at the control screen attached to the pod. A file was blinking. Subject: Cal. Status: deployment confirmed. Cal froze. Deployment? He tapped the file. A video log opened. It was dated 28 years ago. It showed a laboratory, not in EVA-9, but in a clean, white facility somewhere else. A baby was being placed into a suspension pod. A voice spoke. It was Commander Zal, Specimen Cal, genetically modified for high durability and surface survival, implanted with subconscious homing markers for EVA-9 coordinates. Cal watched, his blood running cold. Deploy to surface. Let him mature in the wasteland. Let the hardship temper the genetic stock. When he reaches maturity, he will instinctively seek the bunker. The women will accept him as a miracle. The integration will be seamless. The video ended. Cal stared at the black screen. He hadn't found the bunker by accident. He hadn't been lucky. He was a product. He was a package delivered on a 20-year delay. Vera walked up behind him. She saw the screen. She saw the look on his face, the devastation of a man who realizes his entire life, his struggle, his survival, was just a logistics report. "Cal," she whispered. Cal gripped the edge of the console until his knuckles turned white. "I am not a survivor," he said, his voice quiet and terrifyingly flat. "I am a sleeper agent. I was made to be here. I was made to walk into this trap." He looked at Vera. "Everything I am. The scavenging skills, the immunity, the luck. It was all programmed." Vera reached for him, but he stepped back. He looked at the empty pod. "They didn't just want to use me," he whispered. "They built me." From the speakers above, the sound of static cleared. A new signal was coming in, not from the bunker, from the sky. "Attention, Earth!" Commander Zal's voice boomed, echoing through the hollow silence of the cradle. "The experiment is concluded. Preparation for harvest will begin in T-1 hour." Vera looked at the ceiling. "They are coming," she said. Cal turned away from the pod. He looked at Vera, then at the rows of embryos, then at the door leading out to the women who were just now waking up to their freedom. "Let them come," Cal said. He wasn't shaking anymore. The shock had crystallized into something harder. "I might have been built by them," he said. "But I belong to me. And if they want a harvest, they are going to have to go through the weed they planted." He grabbed a heavy wrench from the maintenance rack. "Vera," he said, "can you fly a dropship?" Vera's eyes swirled with violet light. "I can fly anything," she said. "Then let's go introduce ourselves to your boss." The silence in the cradle was heavy, pressed down by the weight of the water above them and the rock around them. Cal stood before the console, his hand still gripping the wrench, his knuckles white. The video log had ended, but the image of the white laboratory burned in his mind. He looked at his hands. They were scarred from the wasteland, calloused from prying open rusted lockers and fighting off wild dogs. He had always been proud of those scars. They were proof that he had fought for his life. Now, they looked like quality control stamps. "I am a product," Cal whispered. The anger had drained out of him, leaving a hollow, cold space in his chest. "Every time I turned left instead of right in the canyons, every time I found a water cache just before I died of thirst, it wasn't instinct, it was coding." He looked at Vera. She stood a few feet away, her violet eyes luminous in the dim light of the gene forge. She looked devastated. "You feel it too, don't you?" Cal asked, his voice rough. "You look at me and you see a biological machine. Just like your people, just like you." Vera took a step forward, then stopped. She remembered the promise. "I will listen." "I see a man who survived," Vera said softly. "Because I was designed to survive," Cal shouted. The sound echoed off the glass pods, making the sleeping embryos vibrate in their fluid. "I didn't choose to come here. I was a homing pigeon. And this..." He gestured between them, the space charged with the memory of their kiss, the heat of the water in the tunnel. "Is this real? Or is this just pheromones and programming? Did I fall for you? Or did my genes recognize a compatible operator?" Vera flinched as if he had struck her. The accusation hit the core of her own fears, that her species was incapable of genuine connection, that everything was transactional. "I do not know," Vera admitted. Her voice was steady, though her hands were trembling at her sides. "I cannot read your source code." Cal, maybe you were programmed to seek safety. Maybe you were programmed to find the strongest ally. She looked him in the eye, fierce and unyielding. But programming is a starting point. It is not an ending. You know the truth now. The script is broken. So the question is not what you were built to do. It is what you are going to do next. She stepped back, increasing the distance between them. She holstered her microblade, showing him her empty palms. I am not your handler, Cal. I am not your matron. If you want to walk out that door and disappear into the wasteland, I will not stop you. I will disable the sensors so you can run. She swallowed hard, the emotion tightening her throat. But if you stay because you decided to. Not because of a hormone, not because of a command, because of you. Cal looked at her. He saw the pain in her face. She was terrified he would leave, but she was giving him the door anyway. That wasn't programming. That was the opposite of control. Before he could answer, the blast doors at the far end of the cradle hissed. The standoff began instantly. Matron Kale marched in, flanked by 20 loyalist guards in heavy riot armor. Their weapons were raised, the charging whine of capacitors filling the room. But they were not the only ones. From the maintenance access tunnels, Dr. Sato emerged. Behind her was a ragtag army of engineers, medics, and hydroponic farmers. They held large wrenches, laser cutters, and modified mining tools. They did not have the armor, but they had the numbers. Halt! Kale screamed, her voice cracking with strain. Secure the asset, get back! Sato shouted, leveling a welding torch. We are done with the lies. Kale, we know about the deal. The two groups collided in the center of the chamber, a chaotic stalemate of shouting and shoving. The women of EVA-9 were facing each other down, sisters against sisters, friends against friends. Cal stood on the raised dais, the focal point of the conflict. He tightened his grip on the wrench. Surrender him, Kale ordered, pointing her pistol at Vera. He is the property of the state. He is a person, a young medic yelled from the rebel line. A shriek of feedback tore through the room. The main monitor above the dais flickered to life. Incoming transmission. The automated voice of the system announced. Source, Bunker 4. The face that appeared on the screen was scarred and hard. It was the warlord of the South, a woman named Ryla. She sat in the cockpit of a command vehicle, dust streaking the window behind her. EVA-9, Ryla barked. We see your internal telemetry. Your heat signatures are spiking. You are in chaos. We are handling a domestic dispute, Kale said, stepping toward the screen. Stand down. Ryla, this is sovereign territory. You are failing, Ryla countered. We are offering aid. My convoy is at your outer perimeter. We have food, we have water, and we have the strength to restore order. Ryla leaned into the camera, her eyes shifting to Cal, visible in the background. Deliver the mail to our custody for protective holding. In exchange, we will annex EVA-9. We will replace your council. We will become the new matrons. The rebels and the loyalists went silent. The offer was naked ambition. It wasn't aid. It was a hostile takeover. Bunker 4 didn't want to liberate them. They wanted to own the monopoly. It is the same cage, Cal said loud enough for the room to hear, just different bars. Kyle looked at the screen, then at her guards. She was losing control. The desperation on her face was dangerous. We accept, Kale began, if it preserves the sanctity of the— No! Vera shouted. She leaped onto the dais beside Cal. She didn't look at Kyle. She looked at the camera lens that was broadcasting to the entire network. She raised her wrist. The violet light of her alien tech flared. You want to know who is really pulling the strings? Vera yelled. You think Bunker 4 is the threat? Look up. She tapped into the uplink she had established earlier. She forced a signal patch through her own suit, bypassing the matron's filters. On the screen, Ryla's face was pushed aside. It was replaced by a star chart. A red pulse was blinking in the upper atmosphere. Warning, the computer intoned. Orbital entry detected. Unidentified craft approaching. Vera looked at Kale. I just pinged my command ship. Vera said, I told them the deal is void. I told them the matrons cannot deliver the goods. You traitor, Kale screamed. You have doomed us all. I sabotaged the leverage, Vera shot back. Commander Zal is not coming to trade anymore. He is coming to take. The masquerade is over. You have no allies left, Kale. Bunker 4 wants to enslave you. The aliens want to harvest you. She pointed to the women in the room, guards and rebels alike. The only people who are going to save you are standing in this room. The ground shook. A low boom echoed from the surface. Miles above, the alien ships were entering the atmosphere. Panic rippled through the crowd. A guard lowered her rifle, looking at the ceiling in terror. We need the man, a loyalist shouted. If we give him to the aliens, maybe they will leave us alone. No, a rebel screamed. He is ours. They turned toward the dais, 1,000 years of hunger and fear boiling over into violence. Cal stepped forward. He dropped the wrench. It clattered loudly on the metal floor. He grabbed the microphone from the console. Stop. His voice, deep, resonant, and unmistakably male, cut through the noise. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. He looked at the women. He saw the guard who had interrogated him. He saw the medic who had touched his chest. He saw the fear in their eyes. You do not need me, Cal said. The room went quiet, confused. You think I am the cure, Cal said. You think if you have a man, the world goes back to normal. You think the hunger stops then, but look at me. He spread his arms. I was built in a lab to trick you. I am just biology. I cannot fix the water filters. I cannot grow the soy. I cannot fight an orbital warship. He pointed at the screen, where the red dots of the alien fleet were multiplying. This isn't about needing a man, Cal said, his voice rising. This is about scarcity. They starved you. They took away the history, the families, the choice. They made you think you were half a person so you would beg for the other half. He looked at Kale. She told you that you were weak. She told you that you needed walls to be safe, but I survived the wasteland for 20 years, and I have never seen anything as strong as a mother protecting a child she has never met. He looked at Vera, then back to the crowd. I am not a king. I am not a father. I am a partner, and I am asking you right now while the sky is falling to stop looking for a savior and start looking at each other. He took a breath. Do we fight for the matrons, or do we fight for ourselves? For a second, there was only the hum of the ventilation fans. Then, the young medic stepped out of the rebel line. She dropped her weapon. I vote for us, she said. I vote for us, another voice said. It was a guard. She took off her helmet and let it drop to the floor. The ripple became a wave. Throughout the cradle, weapons were lowered. The line between rebel and loyalist dissolved. Women were crossing the gap, gripping each other's arms, crying, nodding. Kyle watched her power evaporate. She stood alone in her pristine white uniform, surrounded by a sea of gray coveralls and armor. You fools, Kale hissed. Her eyes were wide, manic. You chose chaos. She pulled a key from around her neck. It was an old, iron key, contrasting with the high-tech surroundings. She jammed it into a slot on the secondary console. If I cannot control the sanctuary, then no one will have it. She twisted the key. Alert. The system screamed. Core destabilization initiated. Reactor overload in T-3 minutes. Kale laughed. It was a broken, jagged sound. The matron is the mother, she shrieked, and the mother decides when the house falls. Dr. Sato lunged for the console, but the system was locked out. It is a hardware kill switch, Sato yelled. I cannot hack it. Vera scanned the readout. The reactor was already spiking. The floor began to vibrate violently. There has to be an override, Vera shouted. There is, Sato yelled, pointing at the screen. The Founder's override. It requires a prime genetic key. She looked at Cal. It requires you. Cal didn't hesitate. Where? Mother's core. Sato pointed to the heavy blast door behind the dais. You have to physically interface with the mainframe. You have 2 minutes. Run! Vera grabbed Cal's hand. They bolted. The cradle dissolved into pandemonium behind them as people scrambled for the exits. But Vera and Cal ran toward the center of the mountain. They sprinted into the corridor leading to the core. The red emergency lights were strobing, turning the hallway into a disorienting tunnel of blood and shadow. Explosions rocked the facility. Steam pipes burst, spraying scalding vapor across their path. Vera didn't slow down. She shoulder-checked a closing bulkhead, her suit flaring with light as she forced the hydraulics back just enough for Cal to slip through. Go! She screamed, straining against 10 tons of steel. Cal slid under her arm. He grabbed her belt and yanked her through just as the door slammed shut, shearing off the heel of her boot. They scrambled up, breathless, their lungs burning. 1 minute, Cal shouted, checking the timer on the wall. They reached the core chamber. It was a spherical room suspended over a chasm of cooling fluid. In the center, a massive column of crystalline light pulsed with the heartbeat of the AI. A single chair sat before the interface. It was sleek, white, and terrifyingly inviting. Cal ran to the chair. Welcome, Subject Cal, the voice of Mother said. It was calm, oblivious to the destruction outside. I detect a system instability. Do you wish to implement the peace protocol? Yes, Cal shouted, his hands flying over the tactile interface. Override the reactor. Peace protocol requires authorization, Mother said. Please take your seat, Father. Cal froze. To stabilize the society, a paternal figure is required. The AI purred. Sit. Interface. Your neural patterns will guide the colony. You will bring order. You will end the conflict. The chair reclined slightly. Restraints retracted from the armrests. It was a trap. A golden trap. If he sat in that chair, he could stop the explosion. He could save everyone. But he would become the thing he hated. He would be the voice in the wall. He would be the new matron, just with a deeper voice. Cal, Vera whispered. She saw the hesitation. She saw the temptation of duty. Cal looked at the chair. He looked at the timer. 30 seconds. I am not a father, Cal said to the machine. Then the facility will be purged. Mother replied coldly. Cal grabbed the interface panel. He didn't sit. He ripped the cover off the wiring. Vera, he yelled. Bridge the connection. Bypass the permission node. Vera understood. He wasn't going to become the admin. He was going to break the lock. She placed her hands on the exposed circuitry. Her skin mesh glowed blindingly bright, pouring alien code into the human machine. Cal slammed his hand onto the bioscanner, not as a ruler but as a key. Identity confirmed. The machine buzzed. Command, rewrite the protocol, Cal screamed. No single user access. Delete the hierarchy. That violates the core directive. Mother argued. Do it, Vera shouted, her voice harmonizing with the machine code. Cal looked at the screen. Authorization. The people of EVA 9. Cal said, processing. The The timer hit 5 seconds. 4, 3. Hierarchy deleted. Mother announced. Decentralized command structure established. Reactor override approved by committee. The hum of the reactor died down instantly. The red lights stopped strobing. The shaking ceased. Cal slumped against the console, sliding down to the floor. Vera fell beside him, smoke rising from her fingertips. They sat there in the silence of the core, listening to the sound of the bunker not exploding. "We did it," Cal wheezed. "You broke the throne," Vera said, a tired smile touching her lips. "You had the chance to be a god, and you smashed the chair." "I prefer standing," Cal said. The monitor in the core flickered. The internal view showed the women in the cradle looking around, realizing they were alive. Then, the view switched to the external camera. The sky was full of lights. "They are here," Vera said. She stood up, wincing on her broken boot. She offered a hand to Cal. "The reactor is safe. The matrons are done. But now we have an alien invasion and 1,000 hungry people with no leader." Cal took her hand and pulled himself up. "Sounds like a Tuesday," he said. They walked back to the blast door. The journey was slow. The corridors were filled with women, some celebrating, some arguing, some organizing repair crews. The supply lines were shattered. The water was rationed. The factions were already forming new arguments about how to run the hydroponics. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was free. When they reached the main entrance, the blast door was open. Vera had melted the lock hours ago and it wouldn't close again. The storm outside had broken. The red dust lay settled on the rocks. Standing at the threshold, looking out at the ruined horizon, were hundreds of women. They were watching the sky, high above, in the stratosphere. Massive triangular ships hung like jagged knives against the stars. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were waiting, assessing the new variable. Vera stepped out onto the rock ledge. The cool night air hit her face. Cal stood beside her. He checked the bandage on his arm. He checked the knife at his belt. Vera looked at him. This was the moment. The adrenaline was gone. The programming was exposed. The cage was open. "They will want you," Vera said, nodding toward the ships. "Zal will want his asset back. He will offer you things. Power. Answers. A ride off this rock." Cal looked up at the ships. Then he looked down at the valley, where the ruins of the old cities lay in the dark. Then he looked at Vera. He saw the woman who had caught him when he fell. The woman who had given him space when he was cornered. The woman who had burned down her own life to save a stranger. "I told you," Cal said. "I want a future that is chosen." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm, rough, and real. "And I am choosing the hard way. I am choosing the fight." He squeezed her hand. "But I am not doing it alone. Unless you have a ship to catch." Vera looked at the alien fleet. She felt the pull of her own people, the safety of the hive mind. Then she looked at the chaotic, noisy, broken family inside the mountain. She squeezed Cal's hand back. "My ship crashed." She lied smoothly. "I am afraid I am stranded with the locals." Cal smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen on him. No fear, no sarcasm, just joy. "Well," Cal said, "we better get to work." Vera stepped forward, crossing the line from observer to participant. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Cal as the first drops of rain began to fall from the alien clouds, washing the red dust from the stone. The door was open. The world was broken. And for the first time in 100 years, the future was blank. They walked into it together.